Welcome back to Identiverse 2024. We are streaming these interviews live from Las Vegas. We are so excited that you're here tuning in, catching it live, or watching the replay. We have a great set of guests for you throughout the event. But most importantly, we're here right now, and I have a great guest with me here. My guest for this interview is David Mahdi. He is the Chief Identity Officer at Transmit Security. What's going on, David? How you doing?
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm doing fantastic here at Identiverse in Las Vegas. So thanks for having me.
Yes, it's a pleasure. It's an honor to sit down and speak with you. I'm excited. I know the audience is excited because there's this new term that's been emerging, and you have the title Chief Identity Officer. What does that entail at your role at Transmit Security?
Yeah, so definitely exciting times for identity,
Yeah.
right? And I think by virtue of organizations over the years saying, hey, you're an IAM or you're an identity, right? And then we have these directors of identity and then VPs of identity,
Yep.
right? I think it's for some, not all, I think it's a good natural step to say, maybe we need a C level. And, so kind of my role is internal, it's external. It's like obviously doing a lot of evangelism as well about the practice of identity.
Yep.
The reality is that identity is here to stay. And it really is the way how I see it as kind of the concrete and steel foundation for digital business, right? You sign up for an airline loyalty account, government accounts, bank accounts, employee, workforce. Identity it's everywhere, right? And it's one of those things where I think just kind of slotting it under IT, there's merit to that. But by recognizing it as a practice on its own, that does have plugs into other business units. I think that's kind of what it signals to the industry. So I think mine is partly I work for a vendor that develops consumer identity verification, and fraud detection technology. So part of my role is kind of doing internal, external stuff where I get to work on identity projects, also do a lot of work for the community, and getting more involved with some standards with identity to kind of evolve that. Say, this is what we're seeing internally, but this is also what kind of our customers are seeing as well. And you know what? We need to either improve this standard or this approach for the industry. But I could go on and on,
Yeah.
but I'll stop there.
I love the breakdown, and I also love the idea of evangelism because I think it's not only just supporting a product and a company, but it's also supporting the community. So looking at Transmit Security, what do you all do?
Yeah, so I was mentioning it a little bit there. Really, if you make it simple, Transmit Security kind of came on the scene 2016. I was a VP analyst at Gartner, covering identity, covering some data security stuff as well. And Transmit came up on my radar, and really what got my attention as an analyst, and this was covering all of the folks in the space, new and old, many here at Identiverse. Transmit popped up because they had this thing called identity orchestration. And that was all these, we have all these apps that all have identity and some in multiple channels like call center, branch, mobile, web. And Transmit developed this orchestration platform that hooks into all these things but gives IT leaders or IAM leaders a nice visual interface where they can drag and drop boxes and control workflows. And what those did behind the scenes was call out to these disparate siloed identity products. So one of the things that just triggered in my brain was they had a customer, it was a large bank. If I wanted to know about you, I had to traverse 400 applications to get one view of you as a customer.
Right. Yep.
So imagine logging into all those consoles. Transmit solved that by introducing orchestration, and now we see that as a critical capability, as you will, across the industry. But evolving that from there, Transmit now today focuses in on kind of very large scale, high response, resilience, customer identity management. So we're talking some of the largest banks in the world, telcos, e-commerce, you name it. A part of that, there's also identity validation. So when you onboard a customer, you're doing what's known as like a selfie doc scan, but it's also used in the account reset process. So inevitably, we all lose access to our accounts. How do you get on, right? Unfortunately. And then lastly, there's fraud. And we believe that there's a fusion happening. And I know when I look at some of these GenAI attacks, I always say, like, look, fraudsters are using identity to get in. and they're using scams and they're using fraud, and they don't care if you're in the identity group. They don't care if you're a network security person, a cybersecurity person. They get in. And one of the issues I would say in the identity space is identity was kind of born out of productivity. And now we see with all these attacks on IAM infrastructure and identities, it's time that we move into a world of identity security. So
I think the identity orchestration is key because there's a million different ways that someone might access and use an identity. And you might want to safeguard based off of those actions. You know, if I'm at my house and I'm using my applications, maybe it's business as usual. But if I'm traveling here to Identiverse, you might want to have a different workflow for that, verification or giving someone access. And then you look at things like generative AI that is changing the way that we work. It's providing us a lot of productivity, but it also provides the adversary a lot of productivity as well.
100%.
What's the state of Gen AI and security for identity?
Oh, this is a big one. Are we sure we have the time? No.
I think we're good.
I think, so first of all, here at Identiverse today, this morning, I gave a presentation that it was a packed house, and it was talking about the new wave of AI-enhanced attacks on identity or identity-based attacks.
Right.
And look, number one, we all know that bad actors are going after identities, right? They steal our information, they do all these things, and they use that to either create new accounts in our name or do what's called account takeover attacks, or ATO, right?
Right.
Now, with Gen AI, as you kind of alluded to, it isn't just about getting code, right? You can get that even with ChatGPT today. It's also about getting reconnaissance information, vulnerability information, but information also specifically on targets if they're doing a targeted attacks. And so what I talked about today when I showed was insight into the dark web and the chatter that these folks are having, even on things like Telegram, and techniques they're sharing. So I'll hit you with a few things right now. So number one, these bad actors, like Gen AI aside, right? They're collaborating better as a community than we are as, the good team here.
The adversary.
They're doing a better job of sharing information with each other. And remember, they also don't have red tape. They don't have compliance. they don't have any of this stuff. They might have egos where they want to prove stuff, and that might be, an Achilles heel, if you will. But they don't really have much slowing them down. They also were very quick to use new techniques and technologies like deepfakes, SIM swaps, playing around with authorized push payment fraud. They're doing all of this, and you know what? It doesn't matter if they fail. They can try again.
Right.
And they can try again.
Yep.
And in my session today, I also talk about, A/B testing, right? So A/B testing, you could take your customer base and path A, I'm going to try this new authentication method. Path B, I'll try this other authentication method. You let them roll for a while, see how they play out, and then you look at the results and go, path A is the way to go. We're going to migrate our customer base or our workforce to path A. Attackers are doing that too.
Right.
They're trying two different paths, and if B fails, who cares? They can try A. If A and B fail, who cares? They can try again. So they're with all of that in mind, they now have things like FraudGPT, EvilGPT, WormGPT. And I think WormGPT, I had a screenshot of its pricing. You can get access for 1 month for 110 euros. You could get,
Oh, price has gone up. When I searched a few months back, it was a little cheaper.
Yeah, how much was it? You remember?
I think it was $60. 60 euros.
60 euros, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why it's going up is because if you think about all these breaches, how they go out and own accounts and do all these things, they're able to kind of come and say, well, hey, look, our Worm GPT, you can do business email compromise, and this is kind of the ecosystem we have the ability to go into. Yeah, we got telcos, we got airlines, we got you know what I mean? So now they're they know that the brand is out, and they know that the power behind their own platforms is they're becoming much, much more capable. So
looking at the fact that adversaries are wisely using open source information. There's this crazy website called True People Search. You can find a lot of information on someone. For anyone that has their information on there, you might want to get it removed. But, looking at after they've done that reconnaissance and they're hoping to gain access into your environment, what's typically step one for areas or avenues that they'll explore after they've done their reconnaissance?
So it just depends on what they want to do as in terms of an attack. So I'll just kind of give an example, and it's one I gave in the presentation. So it was a authorized push payments fraud, which I'll kind of define as we go through this. So rather than, if you're the victim, right, and you have a bank account, you know, that maybe in the past I would try to do an account takeover attack on you. And I go, you know what? The banks have gotten really good at fraud, at authentication, and all this stuff. So you become a harder target to go after, to do an ATO attack.
For sure.
But you have relationships with other people that maybe you send money to. So I could use these tools to do reconnaissance and maybe find you as a victim. Or the example I gave was a landlord and a tenant. Now, you're the victim, you're the tenant. I could go and find out what properties are for rent, say here in Las Vegas.
Yep.
I can then use these tools to help me find out of those rental properties, who are the landlords, potentially what banks do they use, what telcos do they use, and then of their telco, you know, can I do a SIM swap or other vulnerabilities, and then I basically own their phone, and then I can go to their bank account. Does that bank have some known vulnerabilities? Is it their call center that's weak? So I could effectively put together a plan, an attack plan, and create a list of different landlords. Then I go after, once I get their account, I could send you a text from your landlord's phone, because let's say it is SIM swap.
Yep.
You get the text message and you're like, and I do it late at night, you're tired, you're like, oh, I got a text from David, I always owe him money, whatever. You log into your bank account on your phone. You use your passkey, Face ID, this biometric, that biometric, all of it, all good stuff. You send the money, you're a victim.
Right.
They weaponized your identity, and they weaponized all this amazing tech and approaches that we used. And so to answer your question, they can use these tools to, and that was an APP attack, they can use these tools to fill in the blanks of the needed information, vulnerabilities, people to target, IP ranges, all of that stuff. And Evil GPT, Worm GPT gives them a service where they can do it. Much like how ChatGPT, in some ways when it works well, it makes searching easier, so you don't have to go through 5 websites and read things and stitch things together.
Right.
ChatGPT kind of puts it together for you. That's kind of what. Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
You got it.
Very crafty. I mean, I love to give things like ChatGPT a bunch of context and then ask it a question at the end, like what's step 1 I should take, right? Maybe step 1 is, now that I have access to the landlord or all their information, give them a call. This person is likely to fall for this type of threat or this type of exploit. But looking at your company, Transmit Security, where do you all fit in with preventing these attacks that are derived from generative AI?
Great question. So there's a couple things to be aware of. Let's first start with this. So again, in the presentation, I had a slide. I've been talking about what we call the 3 V's. So number 1, if you're an identity practitioner or you're in cybersecurity and you're planning for this new wave of GenAI-based attacks, you have to brace for the 3 V's and get it in your mindset and get it in your business cases. What are they? Expect more volume of attacks, right?
100%.
Expect higher velocity, right? Meaning that they're going to come at you much faster. There's going to be more, so they're building these things for scale and speed. So they can, remember the A/B testing? They can try 3 different approaches at the same time, much faster. And the last V is variety. Volume, velocity, and variety. Variety meaning that A/B testing, they can try 4 techniques at once, and they can pick it could be survival of the fittest as in terms of their attacks. So with that in mind, you know, there are a number of approaches. Like the only way to fight back is with using GenAI yourself. And there's a couple ways to peel that back. One is like your operations and your admin, right? Look for these new tools that have ways to like short circuit, you know, your way through the administrative interfaces. Transmit Security's got some quick ways to generate reports to say, hey, what are the high risk identities? So you don't have to like poke through the interface. You just ask it like you would ChatGPT. And I think we're seeing the industry turn that on, and we're seeing it more and more. So that's good. So that's, you know, a good first step. The second part though, and this is where it gets interesting. If I go back to that fraud attack, there was a large telco, which I can't share their name, but they were saying how they were able to reduce fraud by simply asking users more questions. So what does that tell us? You as the victim had, say, a GenAI chatbot popped up in your mobile app as you're doing something. It's like, you know, you don't normally send money twice a month. Is this normal? And simply by just mentioning that to you, one, I'm breaking the flow that the attacker would just expect. But two, you as the victim, I'm like getting you to think. And so that's a way where we talk about like a positive interaction that breaks some flow that attackers would use. But it's using GenAI. I'm not using someone in your fraud operations. Right? I'm using these highly scalable tools to match those highly scalable attacks. I could go into way more detail, but you know, I'll stop there.
I love that. Make it harder for the adversary. Make them think, because thinking is hard.
Yes.
David, thank you so much. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us, letting us know about your background, what is a chief identity officer, and also about your company, Transmit Security. For anyone that wants to stay up to date with David and also Transmit Security, be sure to check out securityweekly.com/transmit IDV. That's securityweekly.com/TRANSMIT IDV. And with that, we will see you all on the next one.